on Small Business meeting to order. Without objection, the Chair is authorized to declare the recess of this committee at any time. Today's first order of business is to consider the views and estimates on the priorities of the Committee on Small Business for fiscal year 2024. Then we will briefly adjourn to reset the room for our first hearing, which will take place immediately following this meeting. I now recognize myself to make an opening statement. There is no question that our country relies on small business. In fact, 99% of all U.S. businesses are small businesses. We're a nation of creators, inventors, and risk takers. Our economy was structured to be driven by entrepreneurs. Most net job growth in this country comes from small firms. Yet we are hearing from small business owners back home that they are struggling. In fact, after this markup, we will hear from 4 of those small business owners who will educate us on the problems they face in today's economy. Our goal this Congress is to pass meaningful reform to lessen regulatory burdens and increase access to capital to those who need it most. The last few years of overburdensome regulations and inflation have brought many small businesses to the breaking point. That is why last week, Republican members on this committee sent 25 letters to agencies asking how they were considering small businesses in their rulemaking process. The Small Business Administration, over which we have jurisdiction, has a vital role in helping small firms expand and grow our economy. It is our job on this committee to ensure that the SBA's programs are working efficiently and effectively to the benefit of all types of small business. We must ensure that this is a positive return on investment for the taxpayers. The budget views and estimates presented today for this upcoming fiscal year note that the SBA faces a significant number of challenges. For instance, the emergency funding programs from the pandemic quickly overwhelmed the SBA and were subject to total fraud. In addition, as of May 2022, the SBA had 44 outstanding recommendations for improvement from the Government Accountability Office. The implementation of these recommendations is vital to ensure the SBA fulfills its mission, and we intend to oversee that effort. Our views and estimates also commit to conducting oversight over systematic failures in the SBA and promote legislative changes that will ensure the right people have access to the capital and assistance they need to succeed. So with that, I yield to the distinguished ranking member, Ms. Velasquez, for 5 minutes for any remarks she may wish to make on the budget views and estimates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this markup today on the committee's views and estimates of the Small Business Administration. Let me begin by saying the economic progress we have made over the past 2 years is undeniable. We have added more than 12 million new jobs, and more than 10.5 million people applied to start a new business. This is in large part due to the policies enacted by Democrats in the last Congress. But more work needs to be done, and I'm committed to working with Chairman Williams to make important budgetary decisions for SBA programs. The submission of this document to the Budget Committee is an important aspect of the committee's work, and I am sure my colleagues will agree that it would have been better to wait until the President submits his proposed budget for FY 2024 next week. Having the agency's up-to-date information and projections would enhance our recommendations to the Budget Committee. Our views and estimate letter focuses broadly on improving programs and oversight at the Small Business Administration. We agree with much of the majority's views. For example, recommending that SBA take steps to improve its capital access, procurement, and entrepreneurial development programs is prudent governance. Doing so advances SBA mission to assist small businesses and better protect taxpayers. Another area of agreement is our commitment to conducting vigorous oversight of lending rules to ensure they will actually enhance the current program without causing harm to it or the borrowers. Expanding lending to borrowers in underserved markets is a top priority, and that is why Democrats support codifying the Community Advantage Program, a proven program that has been effective in reaching underserved borrowers. Turning to SBA's disaster loans, which are the primary form of federal assistance for both homeowners and small businesses. We have seen multiple ones in a century weather events. We must ensure sufficient funds are available to help Americans in their times of need, just as we did during the pandemic when SBA delivered $390 billion to 4 million small businesses through the COVID EIDL program. SBA will need significant funding to service these loans over the next 30 years. Federal funding for SBA entrepreneurial development programs provide free or low-cost counseling and training to more than 1 million entrepreneurs each year. The committee has worked in a bipartisan manner to reauthorize this program and increase the levels of funding, which we continue to support. Similarly, SBA procurement programs maximize small business participation in the federal contracts, which in turn boosts competition, lower prices, and expand our nation's supplier base. Robust funding is imperative if we want to provide this program with the personnel and resources needed to adequately meet their intent. Turning to the Regulatory Flexibility Act, we agree agencies need to follow the process to reduce regulatory burdens for small firms, but we oppose a blanket rejection of regulations that safeguard health, safety, and environment. We must proceed with thoughtful deliberation to tailor regulations for small businesses and provide compliance assistance. This agreement on agency priorities is not unusual, and that is why committee Democrats will be submitting additional views and estimates to the Budget Committee. SBA remains the government's best resource for small businesses, be it capital access, counseling, or contracting opportunities. The success of the economy depends on small businesses leading the way, and the SBA is central to this. I thank the chairman again for holding this markup, and I look forward to working together in a bipartisan way to further foster entrepreneurship. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you. Are there any other members who wish to be recognized for a statement on the views and estimates on the priorities of the committee for fiscal year 2024? All right. Seeing none, the committee now moves to consideration of the views and the estimates. A copy of the proposed views and estimates has been distributed to members in advance. Without objection, the views and estimates are considered read and open for amendment. Does any member seek recognition for the purpose of offering an amendment? All right. Seeing no amendments, the question is on adopting the views and estimates on the priorities on the committee for fiscal year 2024. All those in favor say aye. 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 All opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the views and estimates are agreed to. The ranking member is now recognized for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to give notice pursuant to House Rule 11, Clause 2L, that the committee's Democrats will be filing additional views with the Committee on the Budget regarding SBA FY 2024 budget. Thank you.
Without objection, so ordered. Without objection, the staff is authorized to make technical and conforming changes, and I would like to thank everyone for participation today. This meeting of the Committee on Small Business is adjourned. Members, please stay seated, and we'll bring the witnesses up for the hearing today.
Number one done.
Yeah.
We have another binder for the next one.
Thank you. Good.
And
The opening prayer and pledge. Please bow your head. Heavenly Father, God of all people, help us, give us the strength today and the energy to make a difference, not only for our districts, but for this great country. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. Would you please join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. All right. I now call the first hearing of the Committee on Small Business for the 118th Congress to order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare a recess of the committee at any time. I now recognize myself for my opening statement. I want to thank our witnesses for being here today and understand that all of you have traveled a long way to share your stories. We're extremely grateful that you chose to give us your most precious resource, which is your time, to share your firsthand experiences to inspire others to pursue the American dream. As I have said before, this committee seeks to be a voice for Main Street America in Washington. And the goal today is to learn more about the current state of small businesses from the people who know it best, our country's entrepreneurs. And as job creators, you are the driving force of our nation's economy, accounting for more than half the payroll of this entire country. More importantly, you have the backbone of your local communities, though many of you struggles often go unnoticed. I've been carrying on my family business for over 50 years, and I understand the highs and the lows of being your own boss. America's entrepreneurs have confronted numerous historic challenges over the past few years: the COVID-19 pandemic, out-of-control inflation, broken supply chains, high interest rates, and a national labor shortage. But as the small businesses have done countless times before, they endure. Here on this committee, we will work to create an environment where businesses can thrive. Small business owners dedicate their lives and finances to what the products and services they bring to the marketplace. Extra hour of paperwork is one less hour they can tend to their business. Every inflated tax is an extra dollar that could have been reinvested back into the business and their community. Every job vacancy is one more role a small business owner must cover themselves. As we listen to these firsthand accounts, we salute the small businesses who continue to fight and give selflessly back to their communities. We are eager to enact policy solutions that will help have a path toward success for both now and success in the future. I wanted to have this hearing on the American dream first, so we can celebrate the risk takers here today and across the country who have worked countless days and nights to make their dream a reality. I'm excited to have all of you here today with us, and I'm very much looking forward to today's hearing. With that, I want to yield to our distinguished ranking member from New York, Mr. Velasquez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I welcome all the witnesses, and we are very grateful for being able to be here and share your experiences. I welcome all of our new Small Business Committee members and welcome back those returning from the 117th Congress. The story of the American dream has been the story of our nation's independent business owners, those who take the reins of their own destiny and bring ideas to life in the marketplace. From the corner store to the tech startup, these risk-takers embody the ingenuity and determination to achieve the highest of American ideals. Not only do they serve as essential economic anchors, providing the foundations of our communities, they serve as the bedrock of our sprawling democracy. They help distribute wealth and power, promote competition, and provide opportunities for individuals to achieve financial independence. Over the past 3 years, the COVID-19 pandemic defined the small business economy and presented numerous hurdles for our nation's entrepreneurs. But Congress recognized these firms as a top priority and knew that there would be no recovery without a robust small business economy. In the early days of the pandemic, we created the Paycheck Protection Program and the COVID EIDL program, providing small firms with the support needed to maintain operations and protect jobs. A year later, we passed the American Rescue Plan, which expanded upon these programs and created new ones, like like the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. These policies help ensure that Main Street will lead the way in our economic recovery. Now, nearly 3 years after the pandemic struck, we are seeing the fruits of this historic investment. GDP has returned to its pre-pandemic trend, up 6.7% over the past 2 years. Unemployment is now the lowest it's been since 1969, with over 12 million jobs created under the Biden-Harris administration and over 500,000 created this January alone. Small businesses have been driving the robust labor market seen over this past year. According to the Wall Street Journal, while large businesses lost nearly 800,000 net jobs since April 2020, small businesses created a net 3.5 million. Most importantly, more and more Americans are turning to entrepreneurship. After 40 years of decline, small business applications shot up with over 10 million submitted over the past 2 years. This trend is encouraging, and it signals the determination and resilience of the American people in the face of crisis. This goes to show when you prioritize building the economy from the bottom up and the middle out, American entrepreneurs respond with results. However, the road to recovery has had its share of bumps, to say the least. It is no secret that despite encouraging trends in recent months, the cost of running a business remains high. The pandemic, alongside geopolitical conflicts, induced enormous global economic challenges that have affected businesses large and small. Supply chain disruptions and ongoing labor shortages have created headaches for business owners across the country. Additionally, surging energy prices due to the conflict in Ukraine and the price gouging by some of our nation's most profitable businesses helped push inflation to a 40-year high. Early retirements during the pandemic and lack of immigration over the past 4 years has also decreased the pool of skilled workers from which small businesses can hire. Democrats tackled this problem head-on by lowering energy costs through the Inflation Reduction Act and bolstering supply chains with legislation like the CHIPS and Science Act. Additionally, the bipartisan infrastructure law made massive strides toward making government contracting by small minority-owned firms more attainable. We have made great progress over the past 2 years, but our job is far from over. I look forward to working with our members on both sides of the aisle to address the challenges small firms face and ensure they remain the top priority of our economy. With that, Mr. Chairman, thank you for holding this important hearing.
Thank you. Now I will introduce our witnesses. It is my honor today to introduce Zan Prince to today's hearing. Ms. Prince has had a long and distinguished career in the Texas banking industry. Since 1990, Ms. Prince has worked at First Bank Texas, a locally owned business that traces its founding all the way back to 1880. For 33 years, Ms. Prince has served the community in which she also calls home, eventually ascending to her current role as chairman of the board in 2015. In addition to her work at First Bank Texas, Ms. Prince has been an integral part and active member of her local community through her involvement in numerous nonprofits, chambers of commerce, and the Parker County Health Foundation. Her extensive career and knowledge in local banking make Ms. Prince a tremendously well-informed expert today about the issues facing small businesses and Main Street communities today. So, Ms. Prince, thank you for being here today and joining the committee, and I'm looking forward to today's conversation. I now recognize my colleague, Congressman Lukemeyer, for 1 minute to briefly introduce his constituent who is appearing before us today. Congressman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our next witness is Drew Davis, a native of Hillsborough in Missouri's 3rd District. Drew is here today as the owner of Crippling Hot Sauce. Drew is a unique witness for a couple of reasons. First being that as a small business owner, he's still actually in high school. He's only 17 years old. Drew also has cerebral palsy, a disability that inspired his brand's name and poses various challenges for his day-to-day life. But Drew has never let his circumstances keep him from pursuing his dreams. He set his mind to starting a business, and Crippling Hot Sauce was born with a sense of humor. Crippling hot sauce is made from all local products, from the vegetables to the labels, and Drew's business has continued to grow, selling thousands of bottles from his website and retailers across our state. Not only is Crippling hot sauce a local Missouri-made business, but it's also a small business with a cause. 5% of the proceeds from every bottle goes to cerebral palsy research. I'm very proud of this young, determined entrepreneur that calls the 3rd District his home, and even prouder to introduce him today to this committee. Thank you for making the trip, Drew, and thank his parents for being here as well today and their support for their fine son's entrepreneurial activity. Also want to thank the rest of the witnesses for being here as well. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Lukemeyer. And I now recognize my colleague, Congressman Muser, for 1 minute to briefly introduce his constituent who is appearing before us today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our next witness is Mr. Roy Heim. Mr. Heim is the founder and owner of Heim Construction Company, headquartered in Orwigsburg, Pennsylvania, in the heart of my congressional district. In 1990, Mr. Heim founded his initial business, Roy A. Heim Construction, hiring just 3 employees who still work with Heim Construction today. After marrying his wife, Deborah, they founded Heim Construction in 1994. Today, Heim Construction is a full-service general contracting, design, build, and construction management firm that builds commercial, industrial, institutional, and residential facilities. Thanks to their hard work, Heim Construction has gone from hiring just a few employees to now serving as the livelihood of 65 dedicated and hardworking Pennsylvanians. Heim helps build everything from dams and streetscapes to hospitals, surgery centers, and dormitory for Penn State, and I've seen some of the work. Heim Construction is also involved in road and infrastructure projects throughout Pennsylvania. You could say Mr. Heim's business has literally become a pillar of the community. Roy embodies the spirit of the American entrepreneur and has spent over 30 years building his successful business, in spite of the many challenges small business feels along the way. With its diverse set of projects and decades of experience, Mr. Heim notes firsthand how today's economic headwinds are impacting small business like his across America and will provide valuable insight into the current state of Main Street America. I want to thank Mr. Heim very much for making the trip here and to all of our witnesses for testing before this committee, and I look forward to today's conversation. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
I
Congressman.
yield back.
Thank you. I now recognize the ranking member, Ms. Velasquez, for 1 minute to introduce the last witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our final witness today is Ms. Corinne Hendrickson. Ms. Hendrickson has owned and operated Corinne's Little Explorers Family Child Care Center in New Glarus, Wisconsin, since 2007, and has been a registered certified mentor trainer consultant for early childhood educators and business owners since 2018. She has served on the Wisconsin Early Childhood Education Board from 2015 through 2021, including serving as the board's president in 2020. Additionally, she won the Turlin National Child Care Teacher Award in 2020 and the Wisconsin Family Child Care Provider the Year Award in 2017. She currently serves on the Wisconsin Main Street Alliance leadership team and as secretary for the Greene County Child Care Network since 2012. She holds a degree in elementary education and is currently pursuing a master in infant and early childhood mental health through UW-Madison. Thank you, Ms. Hendrickson, for joining us, and we look forward to hearing your testimony. Welcome.
Thank you, Ranking Member Velasquez, and we appreciate all of you being here today. All of you are winners, and thanks for taking time to be here with all of us today. So before recognizing each witness for their testimony, I'd like to remind them that the oral testimony is restricted to 5 minutes. If you see the light in front of you turn red, that's a danger sign. In front of you, it means your 5 minutes have concluded and you should wrap up your testimony. There are no such restrictions on your written testimony, all of which will be submitted for the record. I'd now like to recognize Ms. Prince for her 5-minute opening remarks. Ms. Prince?
Good morning, Chairman Williams, Ranking Member Velasquez, and other members of the committee. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share our story with you today. First Bank Texas is a family-owned community bank, the fulfillment of the American dream of Joe Sharp, a man with a strong foundation of hard work and an entrepreneurial spirit from West Texas dryland cotton farmer roots. He was the product of strong faith, family values, and a public education. First Bank Texas' mission statement is to achieve high performance through our employees who partner with bank customers and our community to make this a better place for our families and businesses while demonstrating a kingdom purpose. For us, that means we take God-given talents coupled with American opportunities to make a difference. Joe Sharp led our family and a group of investors to Baird, Texas in 1982 to acquire a very small community bank. That bank has grown to $1 billion in assets with 14 locations. Our bank is a small business that's grown and prospered despite ever-increasing regulation and requirements to be fair. In 1982, bank documents were simple. Over time, we've added layers of consumer protection that do little to protect consumers. Fiscal and regulatory policy are important. The 2017 tax cuts, really all tax cuts, benefit both the bank and customers. But there's still threats on the horizon. The proposed CFPB Rule 1071 to collect small business loan data to ensure fair access to credit by all small business owners misrepresents the lending market. There are no two small businesses that are alike. If enacted, the process for lending to small businesses will be bogged down in technicalities that ignore creative entrepreneurial plans to establish or grow a business. Our organization is grounded in providing access to products and services without regard to gender ethnicity. Please remember that every bank crisis has had adequate laws to hold those accountable, yet every crisis brings more laws and rules. The 2008 response to the financial crisis is a textbook example. It should have focused on the cause, big banks, but instead imposed costly regulations on community banks. We've been blessed to be able to serve our communities in ways that would have never been considered in 1982. We have an amazing family of employees that are not only committed to our customers and communities, but committed to individual growth through bank-sponsored education and training. Our bank has weathered all kinds of financial conditions since 1880, and through those trials, we worked with people to survive the challenge. Some businesses talk high touch, we live it. Community banks provided 42% of the PPP loans that gave direct stimulus to Main Street, and the bank was honored to participate in that. Community banks serve the financial needs of small businesses who employ almost half of the American workers. Small businesses and community banks are the backbone of the community. They need reasonable regulations, fair tax code, and access to credit to provide products and services to their customers. We've all experienced ups and downs in the economy. Today, many businesses struggle with the lack of labor, increasing expenses, and supply chain issues. I'd like to introduce you to a couple of small businesses in our community. The first is run by Sherry Waters. She does hand-painted items on all sorts of things and sends those not only to customers in Weatherford, but all over the country. The second business was run by Deborah Smith, who recently retired after building and servicing pools in our area for decades. She employed as many as 110 people, creating opportunities for both the company and her employees. Both ladies have built their businesses on hard work, an entrepreneurial spirit, integrity, and excellence that makes our community great. Community banks provide 77% of all agricultural loans and over 50% of small business loans. We provide community partnerships that help schools, charities, and all the businesses that make our communities thrive. Without community banks and small businesses, who fills the gap? Who makes a difference in our community? Who provides that which is unique to who we are today? I encourage you to focus on an environment that creates opportunities for these small businesses and community banks. The United States is the best place in the world to live and work. I, like you, are dedicated to preserving that which makes America great. Thank you for your service to our country and your time today. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Prince. Next, I'd like to recognize Mr. Davis for his 5-minute opening remarks. Drew?
Thanks for having me today. My name's Drew Davis. I own Crippling Hot Sauce. What originally started as a school project quickly became more than that. Crippling Hot Sauce was presented as a business project in my business class in my junior year. I only got an 82%. So like any straight A student would do, I went up and asked the teacher at the time why. That's why when he said, I thought it was a great idea, just a little unrealistic. So instead of getting mad that day, I went home. After 1,200 hours and $3,000 of my own money saved up between Christmas and other occasions. I launched Crippling Hot Sauce. I started Crippling Hot Sauce with a mission to help break the stigma between people with disabilities and the able-bodied community, and show people that we could do whatever we put your mind to. Same with all of you guys. So after all of that, we launched, and fast forward to today, 7 months later, we've sold more than 16,000 bottles, and now more than 96 retail locations across Missouri. That being said, many small businesses face challenges. Because of my age and my situation, I've been forced to adapt with many challenges. One of those being banks. Because of my age, even though I had an LLC, it was most difficult to set up a business account and what you need. I had to call every small bank in my area just to find one that would set me up a business account, even with a writer. Another challenge was manufacturing. Because I only had $3,000 to my name, finding one with a low enough order quantity was difficult. I had to call about 15. The third challenge was just networking. But I've been fortunate enough to have been introduced with a bunch of groups such as the Missouri Grocers Association and more. The fourth challenge, of course, was inflation. Inflation has affected the grocery industry significantly. For example, it's forced my bottles up more than 25% since I started. I've been fortunate enough to grow more, so I've just offsetted that cost with higher order amounts. But for many small business owners that are not as fortunate, that being said, this opportunity has been really great for me because learning to bringing myself out of this bubble, and thanks for Google. Thank you, because I would have never been here without Google and being able to research what I did in such a short amount of time. And thanks for this opportunity, guys. I really appreciate it. And they call me Sauce Boss.
We appreciate it. Thank you. I now recognize Mr. Heim for his 5-minute opening remarks.
Good morning, Chairman Williams, Ranking Member Vasquez, and members of the U.S. House Committee on Small Business. First of all, I'd like to, this is not my testimony, but I'd like to say congratulations and great job. I was not a straight A student, by the way, so you did good. You're better off than me. So thank you for the invitation to testify and discuss this morning and discuss the opportunities, Thank you for the invitation to testify this morning and for the opportunity to discuss the American entrepreneurship and how I started and grew my business. I would also like to thank all of you on the committee, all of you committee members for the hard work you do on behalf of the small business owners like myself. My name is Roy Heim. I am the president of Heim Construction Company, headquartered in Orwigsburg, Pennsylvania, a small rural town in eastern PA. Also born and raised there. I'm an elected school board member and an appointed Tech board member for the Blue Mountain High School District in Schuylkill County, PA. I am also a board member of several associations, including the Associated Builders and Contractors, the Association of General Contractors, and the Associated Pennsylvania Contractors, which is heavy highway contractors. I attended K through 12 and graduated Blue Mountain High School. During high school, I was also a carpentry student for 4 years at the Schuylkill Technology Center, a Tech school that I'm still involved with through the Protectual School Board. I spent most of my senior year in high school in a co-op program where I've gained knowledge on many aspects of my job in the construction industry. After high school, I took a job working on infrastructure projects in Pennsylvania. A few years before I was given the opportunity to move to Homer, Alaska, to work on the Bradley Lake Hydraulic Project. The project, which is still an active energy producer, involved in boring a 3.5-mile tunnel with a diameter of 24 feet and constructing a brand-new 610-foot-long, 125-foot-high concrete-faced and rock-filled gravity dam, all at the bottom of a glacier. I spent approximately 2 years on the project, gaining invaluable experience. Upon returning home, I worked for a concrete contractor for approximately 6 months before leaving to start my own business as a small general contractor in 1991. Heim Construction started with 2 to 3 employees and has been growing ever since. Today, Heim Construction is a construction management, design, build, construction general contractor, concrete service company that does millions of dollars of public and private work, including many state, federal, and federally assisted funded projects. We have been in business for 30 years and currently employ approximately 95 wonderful men and women. Over many years that we have been in business, a number of federal and state regulatory requirements surrounding the construction industry has also grown significantly. We spend an enormous amount of time and money to stay compliant, employing 15 full-time employees in our office who work countless hours to ensure we remain in compliance with the forever-changing regulations. Many of these laws and regulations, while well-intended, make it much more difficult, if not impossible, for small business to comply, complete, and survive, let alone profit. Another issue threatening a small business like mine is tying a state and federal construction funding to special interests. Today, the merit shop contractors, which would be non-union, labor forces employ more than 88% of all professionalisms in the construction industry. For example, when the federal government issues executive orders or passes regulations mandating or prioritizing PLAs, which are project labor agreements, it can tie the federal funds to use of union-only labor and discriminates against nearly 88% of the contractors whose workers have made the decision not to join a union. This eliminates a fair and open competition among contractors, is harmful to the construction industry, its workers, and ultimately taxpayers who pay more because of the limited resources and competition. That 88% is the heart of small business community in the construction industry that you are here to protect and help and thrive. I have a relationship with the unions. I hire them, they hire me, we do jobs across the state together. There is no reason to mandate union-only labor when we can compete and work together with each other. An additional issue facing a small business like mine is the Build America, Buy America Acts. While we fully support the intentions behind the act to keep jobs and manufacturing in our country, the recent modification and amendments and legal decisions and the executive branch actions surrounding these acts have left even the federal officials confused on how to get the projects completed and to ensure compliance. The law fails to consider the limitations on supply chains, ability to supply all the components needed to construct federal construction projects. All of us have felt how fragile the supply chain can be through COVID. The contractor's ability to fully comply with these acts will require transitioning from global supply chain to a U.S.-based one that is not fully capable of handling the demand. Congress and the Biden administration needs to act immediately to add flexibility to the form of exemptions. And I know I'm running out of time, Chairman, but I'll skip over. So while these are just some of the implications of each regulatory obstacle, I have attached a non-exhaustive list of federal and state regulatory requirements that impact construction industry jobs and created. So I want to thank you again for the opportunity to serve as a witness, and I look forward to answering any of your questions you may have.
Thank you. Now I recognize Ms. Henderson for her 5 minutes.
My name is Corrine Hendrickson, and I have owned and operated Corrine's Little Explorers Family Childcare in rural New Glarus, Wisconsin for about 15 years. I have been a member of Main Street Alliance for 2. Thank you for inviting me to speak to you today about my small business and not only my American dream, but the ability of those I work with to achieve theirs. The only reason I can be here today is because I was able to hire a couple of substitutes last year utilizing Federal Rescue Fund dollars, thereby increasing the wage I could offer by $3 an hour and a monthly bonus of $250. This allows me to go to appointments, take classes, and appear before you today without closing my business, subsequently allowing parents to work. However, my one substitute finished her master's in social work, and my second one has been offered a full-time manufacturing job that pays substantially more than I can with benefits, so she gave her notice. I cannot compete. I began my American dream wanting to become a teacher. After I graduated with a teaching license into a 2001 recession job market, I substitute taught and worked in retail, so my fiance and I could buy a home. It was possible then because we had one very minimal student loan to pay off with 3% interest that went down if you paid on time. And homes were far more affordable compared to starting career wages. Compare that to today when large corporations and investors have driven prices up exponentially, increasing our home value this year by about 15% or $50,000. In summer 2007, when our son was 6 months old, some friends and I were together for our usual Monday evening dinner. While our volunteer firefighter husbands were at meetings, and their 3 of them were very pregnant and unable to find care, only waitlist. I was now the head store manager and offered to quit and start a family childcare business. Because of the parents' lack of access to paid family medical leave, I opened my business only 6 weeks after the first 2 were born and 2 days after leaving my retail job. Had we been renting, my dream most likely would have ended before it started. Due to liability reasons, most landlords don't allow family childcare in their rentals. Liability insurance is expensive and becoming more difficult for licensed group and family childcare businesses. Over the last 2 years, prices have risen drastically, or non-renewal notices are being sent instead of bills. Furthermore, childcare as a business plan has a notoriously low profit margin, so purchasing a home would have been impossible without any access to capital. On average, parents pay more than college tuition for one infant or toddler enrolled in care. Moreover, for 2 or more children, it is more than their mortgage or rent. Because fixed costs for food, liability insurance, rent, utilities, toys and books that need to be replaced, continuing education, licensing costs, etc., are extremely high for childcare businesses, this leaves little left for profit or wages. Many of those fixed costs are increasing due to the lack of enforcement of our price gouging and anti-monopoly laws, enabling corporate concentration by pushing out competition, lowering quality while raising the prices. Early care and education businesses are the corner for all other small businesses as key to workforce development and the economy, both today and in the future, by caring for and educating young children while parents work, continue their education, and pursue their American dreams. Secondly, my business product is children. We create tomorrow's workforce and future business owners. The first 5 years of a child's life are when 90% of brain development happens, laying the foundational skills of self-esteem, self-awareness, self-control, critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and curiosity by curating play-based environments that are child-centered and teacher-supported. All skills that my fellow small business owners state they need in our workforce and are lacking. This is detrimental to the future ingenuity and competitiveness necessary to pursue the American dream. By investing in childcare, our rural economy's decline can be reversed drastically and replace the 90,000 family childcare businesses lost between 2010 and 2019. Since COVID, investments to all small businesses and to parents in the form of increased tax credits and deductions increased the affordability of having children. Without the PPP, I probably wouldn't still be in business. Increased investment in childcare due to COVID has increased wages and viability for childcare businesses. Significantly raising wages without also raising tuition has been possible. Empty classrooms are reopening since our employees are staying and coming into the field. However, once the federal ARPA funding runs out, if the state and federal government refuses to continue investing, I will be raising my rates 25% a week per child. This means parents will have to either receive significant pay raises from their employers, remove their child from regulated care, or be unable to find work. If tuition gets too high, more childcare businesses will close due to lack of enrollment. Additionally, we are still down about 80,000 employees, leaving exponentially more parents unable to work since their child is on wait lists instead of in care. Nationally, the lack of infant and toddler childcare costs our economy at least $122 billion annually. In conclusion, from the perspective of small businesses, our government is choosing to focus on big business and corporations, ignoring the dire needs of small businesses around the country, eliminating the opportunity to truly live up to the American dream. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd just like to tell our witnesses, you see people moving forward and backwards. There's a lot of voting going on in different committees, so you're going to see people coming and going. Let me start out by saying the banking industry is critical to the health of Main Street America. Whether it's getting a loan as starting capital, developing a revolving line of credit to keep up with expenses, everyone needs a good relationship with a banker. We saw firsthand how important it was at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, where businesses with existing relationships had a much easier time getting their PPP loans than their counterparts that had not made that connection. Now, as we've heard today, inflation is impacting many businesses across our country. This has caused the Federal Reserve to raise interest rates at a pace we haven't seen since the 1980s. So my question to Ms. Prince, as a community banker, can you talk about what you are seeing on the ground as it relates to the increasing interest rates and the effect they are having on the businesses you serve?
Absolutely. Thanks for asking. Many businesses today that were very profitable, very viable in the lower interest rate environment are finding themselves with an interest expense that is probably unsustainable. And with the focus on additional increases, that puts people that were on the bubble not really able to get a loan and to service that loan. So interest rates have had a huge negative process in our community. We do lots of construction loans, we do lots of real estate loans, and those have slowed down substantially with the increase in cost. Most of those people that are buying a first mortgage today don't remember the 80s, but an 8%, a 7%, a 6% mortgage is just unsurmountable for them. So interest rates are huge.
Thank you. Mr. Davis, your passion and drive to be successful should be an inspiration for all Americans, and too many people see an obstacle as too big and simply give up without even trying, and you were brave enough to put yourself in the game rather than just sit on the sidelines. And before your 18th birthday, you've already overcome many unique challenges, and many seasoned business owners have never previously had to navigate through until the last few years. So I hope you keep working with this, so one day you will have to, too many employees working for you, the hot sauce company, to come before the Small Business Committee. Now, there's something I heard that really impressed me in listening to your story. When you are a business owner and you make a profit, you do not just sit on that money. You hire an additional worker, you invest in new equipment, you think of ways you can give back to the community. And so for some people, giving back is an afterthought once they've already built a successful business, but for others, it is ingrained into the DNA from the start. So question is, can you share with the committee how you give back to the cerebral palsy community through your business?
Yeah, so 5% of our profits go to the National Cerebral Palsy Research Foundation. And this is important because not only will this research go towards ways to make people better live with cerebral palsy, but since cerebral palsy is a it's basically a fancy word for brain damage, it could the research could also further affect the people that also have paresthesis and are paralyzed, and not just the 764,000 people a year that struggle with cerebral palsy through stem cell transplants as well as other things. I believe as we further increase profit, that could substantially help our contributions, which could further speed up the rate in which we're able to give, which will maybe eventually help more people get into the workforce, which will generate even more revenue for the for us, which will help the wonderful economy that the United States has.
Thank you. And I briefed the time that I have, Mr. Heim, your industry has been one of the most impacted by supply chain disruptions. So can you talk briefly about how the pandemic shifted your view in where you source materials? And do American businesses currently have the capacity to meet your needs?
So sure, thank you. So I could just tell you about a last project we just had. It was a 3-year project. We bid the project before the COVID, and COVID came into play. We waited approximately 1.5 to 2 years just to get air conditioners. There's still today, if you want to buy an electrical panel, you're going to wait a year just find an electrical panel. So today is it's very difficult for us to plan, to try to understand how to price. So it's
My time is
difficult.
up now. Thank you for that. With that, I yield back, and now I recognize the ranking member of New York for 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Hendrickson, many small businesses like yours are facing increased costs during this period of high inflation. One potential source of this inflation is the continued concentration of market power over the past several decades. How has the concentration in certain industry affected the price you pay for basic supplies for your business?
Thank you. So for me, as a family child care provider, I'm not able to buy things at scale or go through larger corporations and things like that to purchase. So I have to go to the store to get things myself or purchase online. A few years ago, Office Max and Office Depot are allowed to merge. Since then, my prices for paper, ink, et cetera, have gone up exponentially and have not come back down, along with the quality. My paper frequently jams. I have gone through several printers and things like that, and it's very frustrating because when I purchase something, I want it to be higher quality. And with that corporate concentration, it gets rid of competition and takes away that ability for people like that. Same thing with companies like Amazon that have taken over. You now auto reorder. I don't have a lot of time, but I've noticed those prices have actually gone up more than if I were to purchase from the original the original proprietors.
And funds from the American Rescue Plan and reimbursement from the USDA gave you so much needed breathing room with respect to hiring staff and higher wages. Can you speak more about the importance of maintaining those funds in fixing our country's broken child care model?
Yes. So because childcare has such a low profit margin, we are only able to charge what parents can pay, unfortunately, which isn't a whole lot when you're looking at people at the beginning of their careers. And so we look at the average market rate really isn't comparative to what it actually costs to have a childcare business. So we actually are able to use government supports. Finally, first time in my entire career, I've had money that I knew was coming in every single month, and I was able to take that money and pay my operational costs, raise my own wage, and also hire people, which has been a breath of fresh air for all of those families as well.
Thank you.
The USDA food program has increased to one tier, and if we were to make that permanent through the USDA Farm Bill, that would help offset costs to parents about $15 a week. Group centers, unfortunately, aren't always eligible, and so getting them into that as eligible, no matter what, would also help offset those costs for those centers, so they would be able to pass those savings on to families or increase the wages so they can recruit and retain highly qualified staff.
Thank you. Mr. Himes, it's well known that the construction industry has been having difficulties in finding skilled workers. Have that been your experience?
Yes, that very much so. So right now, our industry nationwide is short about 460,000 people. We're all fighting for people left and right. You know, we spend, I have got on the school board and now work with the technical school board. In our county alone, we have 197 children on a waiting list to try to get into the technical school, which only compounds our problems, that we can't grow and we can't get better.
Do you think that common sense, bipartisan immigration reform could increase your ability to meet the current demands for work that you're taking on?
I do.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Davis, thank you so much for being here. It is an incredible story of resilience. So can you talk to us about how this work has helped you to gain more self-confidence, to hire other people, and then to give back to our community and your community?
Yeah, so through COVID, I really got reserved and stopped talking to people. But when I started Crippling Hot Sauce, it kind of helped me break out of my funk and go out there and talk to people, and it's increased my social skills a lot. And I've also learned a lot through having to talk to people and, kind of screwing up on business pitches. And I just take everything as a learning experience and say I'll get them next time. And if that never happens, at least I tried. But I've consistently gotten better through the last 7 months, and I'm just happy to kind of be that representation in the disabled community because not many people have that.
Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Lukemeyer, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Davis, thank you so much for your testimony today, and you're an inspiration to all of us. If I was the teacher who gave you 82% on your business plan, I think I'd have a problem. So did you go back to the teacher and say, hey, look what we're doing now, and see if you reconsider your grade, or was it too late?
I mean, they didn't renew his contract for the next year, which I think says something. But
I think it does too.
I actually was told that he ended up buying it, which I thought was kind of funny. And he's like, it's really good. And I'm like,
Very good. Well, again, you're an inspiration to all of us. Everybody has an impetus for starting a business, and yours was to show that you had a good plan. If you just put your hard work behind it, look what can happen. And I think that all of you here this morning have got that same story. Mr. Heim, your testimony on all the different community projects and community things that you're involved in is a testament, I think, to small businesses. Our communities don't grow unless our small businesses are there, and our small businesses don't grow unless our community is there. And by participating in the community, you make sure the community grows so that your business can grow. It's a symbiotic relationship there that has to be there, otherwise neither one happens. And so you're a perfect example of that. So thank you for your community involvement. Yeah.
May I comment to that?
Sure.
So I didn't list all the stuff I do from Little League coaching, basketball coaches, and so on, but the one thing that we do miss is we need leadership with our youth today. And being in this business helped me being around other business leaders, helped me get that leadership that then you can transfer to your community and to the children.
Well,
so I think that's very important.
Very well said. Very well said. Mr. Davis, I'd like to ask you a couple questions about your business model. You talked about inflation affecting it. I know in your written testimony you say you absorbed the price of some of the cost of some of the fluctuations. Do you continue to absorb all of it? Do you pass some of it on? How are you looking at your business model?
So, considering we are on the premium hot sauce spectrum, I have just been ordering more to further offset those costs because with hot sauce there is a very large fluctuation on what it can cost, and our goal for the next couple of years is get as many people to try it as they can, and since many people are struggling with inflation, we just want to keep prices down as low as possible to get people to try and contribute to the cause, no matter the profit margin. I know I haven't taken anything as far as I wasn't around with the PPP or anything like that. It's all been my own money, which has helped because I don't have interest rates following me. But I think to add to that, to further help representation in the disabled community, getting more grants and tax subsidies towards underprivileged people, I think would substantially help the economy because the disabled community is a large part. Not many people have access because of cost that it costs to have a disability.
Appreciate that. I think that's extremely important. One of the things you talk about in your testimony here is that permitting and licensing process that you had to go through. Everybody, all small businesses here this morning are going to talk about government rules and regulations. Can you give us a little idea of the cost? Do you have an idea of what the cost is, or percentage of cost that's in your pricing of your product for rules and regulations, just off the top of your head?
Not exactly, but I would estimate it's between 10% because a lot of that is through my manufacturer, and I know a lot of those things are per county. So there's not like a thing that's like you get this for the state of Missouri and you're good for all counties. Each county has their own health department, and that really makes it confusing because you have to have this for this county and that for this county. And I think if we kind of fast line the application process and the licensing process, more people would get into the grocer industry, which would make it to where there would be more competition for the
I'm
big
running out of time. I got one more really important question here. In Missouri, they allow you to have a personalized license plate. Does your personalized license plate read Sauce Boss?
That's a good idea, though.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you very much. The gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Phillips, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and greetings. I think the world of all of you. I'm a business person myself. I know how tough it is to run a successful business during the best of times and how tough it is during the worst of times, which, of course, the past 3 years have been. And I love the mosaic here because it's this great ecosystem of business. Now, you have a lender, a builder, a product maker, and a service provider. And I want to thank you for being part of this extraordinary ecosystem. I do a series at home called On the Job with Dean, where I visit small businesses every week I'm back home, and I do a 2 or 3 hour shift. I don't get paid, which means I'm being paid what I'm worth. And it's probably the most fun and illuminating part of this entire service. So my question to each of you is, if you had your member of Congress join you at your business for just a day, for an afternoon, what specifically would you like them to take back to this committee about their experience? Ms. Prince, maybe you can start.
Sure, thank you. I think I would invite Chairman Williams to our loan committee so that he understood what it takes for the small business to put together a package and present it to a bank and to go through the entire process. So it's not very simple. It used to be. It's not anymore. But I think it would be eye-opening to see the amount of information that they have to provide, that the bank has to require in order to make a sound credit decision going forward.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Mr. Heim.
So I think I would ask Mr. Muser to spend an afternoon and then quite a few evenings going to municipal meetings, dealing with EPA and DEP and trying to get a permit approved that could take us up to a year to get done. So that process is something that unless you do it, you really don't understand.
Yeah, permitting reform. No,
Correct.
thank you. Mr. Davis.
I mean, my industry is kind of unique because I could basically take any of you guys and show you how complicated some of the paperwork and stuff has to be. And I think each of you would have the same kind of mindset going out of it, that it's really hard, and both on the state and federal level, things can be done for any state because, like I said, there's 50 states and each of them have their own rules and regulations.
Yeah, thank you. And Ms. Hendrickson.
I would invite you to start your day with me at 6:30 in the morning, cleaning and prepping for all of the children to show up, and then having those few conversations with parents about what their night was, what I can expect that day, and then enjoy spending time with the children, but then also seeing how many different things I'm doing at one time, between diapering and feeding and, navigating between the children that are playing really well, but then somebody wants to come in and hasn't quite learned yet how to ask to play, and how important that is, because even we can notice that the adults sometimes don't know how to ask to play nicely either. And I think that would be something that would be great to take back with. And then also then getting them all down, like getting lunch ready, getting them fed, getting them down for naps. While they're napping, I do my paperwork and my meetings, and you could learn how to do the USDA food program and all those other things that I have to try and keep track of, enter my receipts and all the things I have to do as my own accountant, because there aren't enough accountants out there that actually understand the implications of family child care and all of the different various tax write-offs that we have that we should be getting, and that leaves a lot of money on the table. And then the children start to wake up, and so then we do bathroom and diapering and everything, and then we go outside and play. We've done that a few times by now. And then the parents come and pick up. I let them know how their day was. The children leave. I now have to do laundry, dishes, do all kinds of other things, paperwork. My own children that are 16 and 14 deal with their things. And then sometimes I'm still on meetings and classes and running meetings, mentoring consultants until about 7, 8 o'clock at night. And then you could go home.
Wow. Yeah, by the way, I have to say, I think my colleagues can relate to adults that don't play nicely together sometimes. With my brief time left, we, during the pandemic, we passed some legislation to help small businesses. It was imperfect. There was some fraud, of course. But just quickly, if I might just add, I know, Mr. Davis, you indicated you didn't secure a PPP loan because you started your business. Ms. Hendrickson, did you?
Yes.
Any support? Yeah.
Yes, I did, actually. I was able to, through my small community bank, they reached out and worked with me very, very much. And I actually then helped other people who are unable to access the PPP through their larger banks because they were not prioritizing them, get that PPP through my bank.
Terrific.
So it was fantastic.
Mr. Heim?
Yes, we did. So we were, because we do medical work in the state of Pennsylvania, we were allowed to continue working, so it did keep us working.
A PPP loan or? Oh,
PPP, right?
terrific.
And then what we did is there was a few crews that worked for the Department of DOT, and they could not work. So we kept them employed,
Great.
and we actually did community work. We did ball field. We went and we did a ball field over for the local town.
Terrific.
But we did everything we could to keep them working and make sure they were employed.
Terrific. And my time's expired, but Ms. Prince, I was going to ask you about how we could have done that better as someone who clearly
And Ms. Prince,
facilitated
let us come back. In fact, I'll pick you up with that question when it comes my turn. So stay
Perfect.
right there.
Thank
But
you all very much.
Well done.
I
Mr.
yield
Phillips,
back.
thank you very much. Let's go to the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Muser, who's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much to our witnesses, to my friend Roy Heim for making the trip again, and to all of you. So, I spent most of my adult life in small business and growing into, fortunately, a larger business. And my customer base for small businesses certainly know the trials and tribulations that many of you are expressing, and all that you do give, along with employing 95%, in my district anyway, or make up 95% of the businesses, employ almost 75% of those who are employed. In my district, over 100,000 people work for small businesses. And yet, small businesses tend to be under the gun from energy costs that have risen. And many small businesses work with the energy industry, which hasn't been, particularly natural gas in northern Pennsylvania, which has been kind of under fire as well. The inflation, the regulations, the interest rates, the access to capital, the supply chain issues, the workforce. So we know the issues that, and this committee is that you have. This committee is about trying to find solutions. So, Mr. Heim, I'm going to start with you, if you wouldn't mind. Well, first of all, what you brought up about all the giving that small businesses do. I mean, that's just so very important. How Main Street does pay for the little leagues and are usually the most charitable and involved in communities. So that should always be noted. That level of continued value add or additional value add. But in your testimony, you submitted an exhaustive list or a non-exhaustive list, nearly 50 pages long, with details of regulations that your construction business contends with. Now, how long was that list 30 years ago when you began your business? Was it the same? Was it a lot shorter?
Due to a lot of ignorance and not really understanding, I couldn't tell you how long ago how big that list was. But yes, in all honesty, in the last 10 years, that list has grown quite a bit and became more stringent. So there might have been policies in place, but they've gotten tighter and tighter over the last 10 years.
If you were trying to start a business to yours similar today, as you did 30 years ago, would it be possible? How much more difficult would it be today for a small business to start like yours, because that's the business you know best, versus when you started 30 years ago?
So to start the business, probably not that hard. To be compliant and do it correctly,
Grow.
very difficult. Very difficult.
Very difficult.
Because I could tell you, unless you have an attorney, an accountant, and everything, and spending that $50,000 to $100,000 right up front to understand all the rules and regulations that you must abide by.
Twice as difficult, 3 times more. How much more difficult today than 30 years ago?
I would say 3 times more.
Okay, and that's due to not taxes, it's due to
It's due to
bureaucracy,
compliance.
regulations.
Correct.
Added regulations.
Correct.
Okay, so what about inflation? The costs that you've been contending with. If you were doing a project 3 years ago that cost $5 million, what would that project cost just 3 years later?
So today, and I can only tell you this, is to try to make things simple, if you did a typical office facility today that 2 years ago might have been $125 a square foot, today you're looking at $250 a square foot.
So perhaps double. Double
Close.
in a 3-year period.
Close. A lot of it, it's labor, it's material, it's quite frankly not being able to understand if you can get the material and people are charging more.
And, like you, I respect unions. I respect all workers. I respect all Americans, for that matter. And you can understand the joining a union doesn't label anybody anything other than they're part of a union. We support unions. Now, but when you're expressing it related to PLAs, should the requirement be to have an opportunity to bid for a contract be that you are a union, that you only employ unions? That certainly limits the competition, but also excludes you and 88% of the workforce, as you stated.
I don't believe the government should put any impediments in front of anyone to be able to procure work. So we do PennDOT work. They want to put a PLA, or the federal government wants to put it. We're all pre-qualified. We're all bonded. We all do the work. I work with unions every day. I get hired by unions. I hire union contractors. So we can be fair and we can work together. And I have a great relationship with them. But there's no need to single people out.
Thank you for your testimony. I yield back, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the Kentucky, where Mr. McGarvey's standing by. He's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. It's great to see everyone. I echo the comments of Mr. Phillips. It's great to see so many people in so many different capacities, and to hear your all stories echo so much of what we saw. I was in the state legislature in Kentucky when the pandemic started, and so was on the ground. And from the people who received PPP loans, or from all the community bankers in Kentucky, we heard who were sleeping in their offices to make sure that business had access to capital, to the people who were trying to build things and keep things going, to the number of Americans who started new business as a way to deal with some of the pressures of the pandemic. It's really great to see all of you here and to hear your stories. To make this, if I ask my questions, one of the things I did yesterday before coming to Washington was drop my 4-year-old off at her child care facility. And as the working parents of 3 young kids, I know how vital, affordable, and accessible child care is for every young family in this country. Unfortunately, like a lot of places in the United States, Kentucky is facing a child care crisis. And we have a Kentucky Center for Economic Policy that says that over half of the Commonwealth of Kentucky is a child care desert right now. That means little or no child care is available. Almost half of the child care centers have closed their doors over the last decade. And when parents are able to find child care, I know this firsthand, it can cost almost as much as a year of tuition at the University of Louisville. This is something we've got to get right. In my state, over 100,000 women alone have left the workforce and not returned to the workforce because of what we're facing in childcare. So my question is for Ms. Hendrickson. We hear a lot from small business owners about that there aren't enough qualified workers, that there's a lot of pressures. How can continued investment in childcare and childcare centers by the federal government help with providing childcare with childcare providers, and also help with the labor force as a whole?
Well, we are the workforce behind the workforce. Without us, people can't work, and without us, the children will not be ready to work, because again, that brain development starts at birth, not when they're 5 or 4 or 3 or whatever magical age school officially starts. And we can also meet the diverse needs of our community with the hours that are needed. So people who work late at night or second shift or third shift or weekends, our small businesses are there for them to help meet those needs. However, because of the fact that we can only charge so much, we cannot pay that in wages, because that's the piece that's missing, is that wage piece. Our military currently does fund childcare that way. The rest of the OECD countries fund childcare at about 0.76% of GDP. The United States is second from the bottom, only above Croatia at 0.35. If we even get that up to the average, it would be enough to get childcare off of the ground, subsidized. We'd have high quality educators who can stay in the field. Right now, 3 out of 4 people with a degree in education, early childcare education, do not work in the field. We are highly sought out by other people because they know we have people skills, they know that we're educated, they know that we have patience, and that we have a lot of passion. So by funding those core pieces of that wage so that we can get the wage rates up from about $12 an hour to a sustainable living wage even, let alone commensurate it with our other very valuable small business owners and employees that normally are making at least $18, $20, $25 an hour with health care, with paid family medical leave, and with retirement. We can't even offer any of those things. My retirement right now is about $3,000 besides what I have with my husband. And that's because he has a great job. And so, right there, that investment would make the world of the difference for us and our people and all of the other small businesses that rely on us and employers that rely on us in order to have a workforce.
I really appreciate that you even answered some of my other questions in that really good response. But I love how you said the workforce behind the workforce, which is so important. I think shows why continued investment in making sure we have quality, affordable childcare is important to every small business in this country. Mr. Davis, I do want to ask you a question. I'm a Mizzou alum. I'm married a Jeff City girl, so it is great to see you here. It's great to see your success story. I also want to point out, I got on your website while we've been sitting here. Your sense of humor doesn't stop at the name of your business. The sauces themselves, just for the parking, mild crippling hot sauce. Limping, medium, and then crippling agony. It's great to hear your success story. And as we see individuals with different abilities that are less likely than their peers to participate in the workforce, as you noted, they face greater barriers to starting their own businesses. How can the federal government do a better job of helping job creators who do have different abilities?
Yeah, it's just grants and tax credits and things of that nature, because we don't have as great as an opportunity, a lot of us, to get in the workforce, because as much as it's gotten better, there still is a lot of workplace discrimination against people with disabilities and other underprivileged individuals. And I think that people with disabilities statistically make less than even women do on average. That's not necessarily right, because a lot of us, like I said, do have the same intellectual capabilities, and it's just going back to thinking how they did in the early 1900s, where disabled people were only in the life skills classes and stuff like that. But it has gotten way better, and I'm just here to help push the envelope even further and show everybody what can be done at such a situation.
Thank you, and I'm out of time, but thank you all.
Thank you very much, Mr. McGarvey. Let's go to Texas, where Mr. Elzey is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here today. And I'm going to echo Mr. McGarvey on the sense of humor, Drew, that you have. And I can only imagine how many times you've gone up to a place that has some parking and you might see somebody get out that's got the placard. And I think that is a nice shot across the bow, that just for the parking, hot sauce clearly is from experience. To your parents, would you raise your hands, please? You've got to be exceptionally proud of this young man who doesn't sound like he's 17. He sounds like he's 37, 47. The wisdom in this young man is vastly beyond his years. You have to be exceptionally proud, and I guarantee you that that's the first young man in his class who's going to be a multimillionaire. And my hope is that at the age of 25, you sold out to somebody much, much bigger for $1 billion, and you and your parents can go do whatever the heck you want or start another multi-billion-dollar company. So thank you for your stubbornness, for your sense of humor, for the points that you've made here today. As you've been talking, I've watched everybody else around here nod their heads. So you not only speak for your family, for yourself, for your company, but you speak for many other people throughout this country. And I see a much bigger, brighter spotlight for you in the near future, but you got to get out of high school first. I'm sure that's probably part of the priority. So thank you for building this business, and thank you for coming to us today. Ms. Prince, as a fellow Texan, I'd just like to ask you, and it may have been briefly brought up today, as we know, the CFPB, the funding structure for the CFPB is before the Supreme Court right now. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens if that's struck down, their funding structure, which of course comes from the Federal Reserve instead of the appropriations process through the United States Congress, which means there's really no mechanism for constitutionally the Congress to regulate what the CFPB does. So I'm curious to see what happens with Rule 1071. Of course, that won't come out until, I think, September of next year. But how much more time is your company having to spend on meeting the restrictions or the requirements of 1071, and who does 1071 help?
So 1071 hasn't been enacted yet.
Okay.
So we're not currently collecting the information. But if enacted, we would be collecting information as though you were doing a home mortgage. We would do all the demographics, the income, all the different pieces on every small business loan, as though a small business loan can be put in a box and that all are alike, which just isn't true. So if you look at the people here, the demographics, the needs, the supply chain needs, all of the labor needs, all of those things go into what make a small business unique. And so going forward, we would hope that there is no inaction of CFPB's 1071 rule, which really just creates a whole nother layer of regulation and reporting, such as HMDA for real estate mortgages.
Does it help anybody get a loan?
It doesn't help anybody get a loan.
Okay.
It may, in fact, hinder people from credit access, because if you're just looking at a statistical representation of the small business, you're not looking at their business plan. You're not looking at their creativity. You're not looking at their passion. You're not looking at a young man who decided that he would go to multiple small banks, to multiple manufacturers, to multiple sources before he got what he wanted, and before someone recognized that that young man had a vision, he had a business plan, and he had something that would work. So it's really important that we leave some of the business decision-making in the hands of loan committees and the business access, loan access to really people who have an entrepreneurial spirit and are creative in their plans.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate what community banks do. I started out with a big national bank, and I love the community bank setup. People I know, people who I can contact, and thank you for your service in providing for our country's finances. Real quick, Mr. Heim, thank you for building America. I don't have any questions for you, but I know this is a tough business to be in right now. And finally, Ms. Hendrickson, thank you for being here, and thank you for taking care of the children while the rest of America works. I know it's a struggle from time to time, and I hope things turn around very quickly for you, and like to see how we can help. So thank you all very much. I yield back my time, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Elsey. We're in the city of Washington, but now we're going to the state of Washington, where Ms. Glusenkamp-Perez is standing by, and she's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much to all of our witnesses for being here. Mr. Hyman, in your testimony, you mentioned your involvement in trying to get high schoolers in the trades and your early involvement in high school. And I know I'm part of the generation where all of our best trade schools got turned into, or trade programs got turned into computer programming classes instead of the auto shop. I own an auto repair shop myself, working the trades. And our kids are being told directly and indirectly that basically you did something wrong if you ended up working with your hands for a career. And we're seeing the consequences of that. We are short, 350,000 workers in the construction trades alone. And so my question to you is, what do we do to restore the prestige and sort of the dignity back to working in the trades in your perspective?
So that's great, because you're right on target. 6 years ago, I worked with a state rep by the name of Michael Tobush, myself, and a few other people, and we started, in Pennsylvania, they passed a law where teachers can now get continuing ed credits by going out to industry. Instead of just doing other stuff, they actually go to industry, and the results out of that was tremendous. They didn't understand what the local community, what the local business has done. They didn't understand how much money the people were making, so on and so on. So we've done that, and I can tell you, our local school, we've done open houses with industry involved. We've changed the whole concept of how we teach. And like I said, there's 197 children. Our local school that graduates 240 students, we had 88 eighth graders apply for the ninth grade to go to technical school. Now, the unfortunate part about it, because there's no funding and the school's not big enough, only about 15% of them got in. But that perception, I think, is changing, along with what's going on when it costs $150 to get your toilet looked at and it's not fixed yet. That is also making parents, I think, look at it a little different now.
Thank you so much. Ms. Hendrickson, I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for the work you do. I'm a mother of an 18-month-old, so I was on all those wait lists. I live in a childcare desert. It's about 4 hours of driving every day that my child goes to daycare. So thank you for sticking it out. Thank you for your persistence, and to your employees who choose to work in an underfunded, underpaid job. I would not be here without folks like you and your team. So I guess my question is, well, first, could you kind of speak to the challenges of recruitment? And could you also talk, like, what can we do in Congress?
So the number one challenge is the wage. We cannot pay anything. Wisconsin was about $10 an hour. Family child care, we make less than minimum wage by the time you put our hours in. And so we really need to be able to get those wages up without pricing parents out. So we have to have some sort of system where the money goes directly to the wages. In Wisconsin, we took our ARPA funding and we actually put it into two pots. Every single program is eligible every single month to get money. One part is for operational costs. The other part goes directly to the teachers. And we fought for that as a group within our state and worked with our state licensing agency to make that happen. And that is what we are continuing to try and do, because it really comes down to those wages. And we also need some more health care and paid family medical leave and other things that all of us really small businesses cannot access, because we cannot afford to provide those things for ourselves or for our employees. And so that way, if we had it more took our taxes and more equitably distributed them, we would then be able to help encourage all of our people to be able to do what they love and not have to worry about being tied to a different employer because they need health care. That's also why a lot of parents actually aren't able to stay home with their children longer. They have their baby and they have to drop off after 6 weeks because they don't have any paid medical leave. If that would also help offset some of those crunches for infant care, especially because if a parent is able to stay home longer, they don't need care for longer. And so those spots won't be as filled with those infants and toddlers, which I am all for health and safety requirements. I do not want ratios. Imagine having 6 babies, all of you, while you're trying to, interact with each of them and meet their needs.
Thank you so much. And finally, Mr. Davis, I'm just so impressed with your entrepreneurship, and that spirit will carry you so far. And I think it's great. One thing that I've heard from other entrepreneurs is that people who rely on SSDI or SSI or other federal support sometimes choose not to take on that risk and risk their benefits as they start a business. Do you have thoughts on that quickly?
So I never took SSI. I never really believed in it, just because I want to save it for those that really need it, because I know plenty of people that don't really need it but are eligible for it, and those that clearly do need it need a very comprehensive proof when it's pretty obvious, which I think is kind of contradictive. But I never really believed in it, so my parents did a good job of instilling that in me at a young age, that you could work, so you're going to work. So I abide that by them, and I thank them for that every day.
They're giving you the thumbs up behind you, too, Drew. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Very good. We're going to Missouri, where Mr. Alford is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. What an honor to be here today. Thank you to all of our wonderful witnesses today. Drew, I think you need your own reality show. That would be some reality show. Thank you, Chairman and Ranking Member, for holding this important hearing today. I'm really honored to serve on the Small Business Committee, especially having been a small business owner myself in the state of Missouri. Small business, it really is the fabric of America. Businesses that contribute greatly to the American economy, our way of life. Making America great is simply reclaiming the hope of the American dream for everyone, and really setting us on a renewed course of achievement, prosperity, patriotism, and unity for our country. Today, as we've all recognized here today, businesses are plagued by rampant inflation, ongoing supply chain issues, unwavering workforce shortages, overregulation in a lot of cases. We've talked about that. And I really believe that our nation is great because of small businesses, and I'm honored to be here today with this committee and other committee members to hold the Biden administration accountable to create a business-friendly small business administration and once again unleash the American dream for all Missourians and for all Americans. It's so important. We have a lot of small businesses to be proud of in the great state of Missouri in our 4th District, like the Stanton Brothers. They're a family farm located in Boone County. Much like your story, Drew, they started their business out of a first-grade project. They've grown it to a business producing 42,000 eggs per week on their 5th-generation family farm, so we're very proud of them. And it's really our job, I see it, Mr. Chairman, as our job of this committee to work together so that many more Americans can achieve the American dream, just like the Stanton Brothers did and just like you have done, Drew. And I want to start with you, Mr. Davis. You're really an inspiration for us. I don't say that lightly. I thank you for being here, for representing Missouri and America. I kind of see it as our job to help you grow. And aside from the things that you've brought up, the grants and tax subsidies, what else can we do to make it easier for you to grow your business, hire more people, and really become a rich part of the fabric of America?
So for the grocery industry, that's one word: distribution. Getting more connections to distributors is huge because you need a distributor in the grocery industry to really grow, and there's a lot of connections out there, but not enough for the amount of people there are wanting to launch these small businesses. And there's a lot of great small businesses in the grocery industry that hasn't been as fortunate as I was getting a bunch of the media attention that allowed me to get some of these connections in distribution. So it's more making those well known so that we can have more lower priced goods for consumers.
More competition. That'd be great. Would you like a little competition for your hot sauce?
Mainly it's for those big corporations that like the price gouging and stuff, because that really affects us small businesses, because people look at, the Franks that are made in overseas manufacturing facilities with, child labor, and they're like, why can I buy Franks for $2.99 and yours is $6.99? So it would really help us with that competition and getting more higher quality goods on the market.
I want to talk a little bit about supply chain issues, because I know, especially 2 years ago, getting bottles made was difficulty. Wine industry faced that, all sorts of bottling issues going on. Are you facing that now with the supply chain issues, with bottle caps, labels, that sort of thing? Talk about that we got 40 seconds left.
Yeah, the lead time for those things are more substantial than ever. I know I tried to put in an order for one of my flavors for just like 6,000 bottles, and they're like, sorry, we don't have that in our warehouse right now. And same with plastic caps. I mean, they're like, well, do you want just black, or will you settle on white and black? So I'm starting to have to do different colors. It's going to look like the United States flag, which I love the United States, but it confuses the consumer. They think it's different flavors and stuff like that.
Got 10 seconds left. Where can I sample your product? Did you bring some today?
I did.
All right, let's break it out. It's almost lunchtime. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you, and God bless you all.
Thanks.
I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Alford. Let's go to Michigan, where Ms. Skolton just walked in the nick of time. She's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank this here. Thank you so much. Oh, sorry, I thought you were talking to me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, thank you to all of our witnesses. I'm glad he asked the question about where the hot sauce was. I can't wait to try it myself. We in Congress can sometimes lose sight of what it's like on the ground running a small business day to day, and your perspective is invaluable, helping us craft policy that meets you where you are and helps you stay competitive. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. These questions are for Mr. Heim. As the ranking member on the subcommittee on contracting and infrastructure, I'm especially interested in how the contracting and subcontracting dynamics play out in the construction sector in particular. In your experience, what role do prime contractors play in helping the subcontractors grow their businesses in particular?
So today probably more than ever with the ability to find tradespeople. I mean, we do spend a lot of time educating also. So there's a lot of people that have got into our industry that necessarily are not educated. They are tradespeople. They're not business leaders. So we do spend, me personally, have spent a lot of time with different individuals, bringing them in, talking about what a prevailing wage is, how to comply with prevailing wages, literally how to look at blueprints. So there's a lot of gentlemen that can build stuff out there, but really don't understand how to look at a blueprint. So, yeah, we do spend a lot of time dealing with the smaller businesses.
Mm-hmm. And what would be your number one recommendation or one or two recommendations that you would have for subcontractors who are eventually interested in becoming prime contractors?
The recommendations, get ready. You're going for a ride? I don't know that I really have any recommendations. I mean, it's every individual is a little different. Everyone has a little different training and thinks a little different. So it's almost on an individual basis. I don't know that there's an overall recommendation I would have. Save your money because there's going to be a time, right? And really, I guess the number one recommendation I would have is make a relationship with your bank, make a relationship with your accountant, have a relationship with your attorney, be part of affiliations that are part of your association so you can get educated.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that would be the overall.
That's great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, yield back.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sculton. Seems it's my turn. I'm Aaron Bean from Florida, and I am pleased to recognize myself for 5 minutes. I, too, was a small business owner and I started up a small business. I also was a banker, so there's great excitement when things are happening as they are at the table right there. I want to remind you, even some of our largest businesses started small, but both Apple and Google started in family garages. And if you don't believe me, you can Google that right now. And Drew Davis, how about this? Do you know the story of FedEx where Fred Smith actually wrote a term paper? I think he got a C on their creation of FedEx, and who's laughing now with that? Let's go back to Ms. Prince. As a banker myself for many years, and Mr. Phillips you didn't get to answer Mr. Phillips' questions earlier. What are you seeing different now versus servicing loans as it was with the previous administration? Has it changed? Is there anything different about banking now than it used to be?
So every day, the regulatory requirement increases, or the interpretation of a regulatory requirement is ever changing. So we spend a whole lot of time back in the day when our family first got involved. Compliance or regulatory compliance was probably a part of a person, a part of a full-time employee. Today, it's at least 6 full-time employees. It is a whole nother group of people within our organization that are trained compliance officers, trained in regulations, and we spend a whole lot more money reaching out to make sure that all of our pieces are in place, not to provide a safe and sound loan, but to provide a safe and sound loan that checks all the boxes, that has all the pieces of each and every regulation, like I said, that is an ever-changing interpretation.
I got you. What do your customers say? I know when I was there, every loan I made to every business, I felt a part of the excitement of growing that business and making sure that they grew and most importantly could pay us back and that they would thrive as well. What are your customers saying? What's the word on the street at First Texas State Bank?
So our customers are expressing the same things about supply chains and finding labor in ever-increasing costs. Our customers are very concerned about interest rates, and they're concerned about the same sort of regulatory requirements. So they want to go in, they want to get a permit, they want to do their job, they want to do their job right, they want to know that they can predict the cost of that so that they end up walking away with a profit. And in the current environment, that's an ever-changing process also, right? If you started in 2019 or we started to build a building in 2020, the price went up probably 50 or 60% before that building was complete. And most people don't have that in their business plan. Mm-hmm. So we need a tax environment that's good, but we need a regulatory environment that's appropriate. We need interest rates that are reasonable. We need energy. We need the things that are all the inputs into our businesses so that they can be profitable and successful.
Thank you very much.
And I'm with you. Every one of those businesses, we are attached to them. We have a partnership with them. We are there to make sure that we weather the storm with them.
Very good. No, I'm with you, Mr. Heim. I've got a lot of questions, but guess what? That clock on me is eating up. You've talked about inflation kicking your tail, but there's something on your mind right now. What is it?
So dealing with banks for the last 30 years, the one thing that I really noticed is as these regulations grew and as your conditions grew, right, we lost our relationship with our bankers. So what used to be you go out to lunch, they start to fully understand your business and understand why you need what you need. Today, I don't think that's there anymore. I think you're writing on a piece of paper on if they feel adequate for you to get a loan or not, but it's no longer that personal relationship.
To that end, there are people like Ms. Prince, and I thrived on that because the big banks, I was a small little banker, and that was my little secret weapon that I could develop that relationship. So she's already nodding. She gets that, and that's why bankers like Ms. Prince are going to thrive. With the last few seconds that I have, let's go back to Drew Davis. Drew Davis, everybody wants to know, you're 17. Are you a junior? You're a junior now, about to be a senior, or you're a senior?
So I'm a senior. Yeah. Running my business out of the library 5 hours a day because I only have two classes.
Very. No, well, we're all proud of it. Your folks are proud. They're beaming tall. But with the last few seconds, everybody wants to know, what are you doing next? Are you going to college? Are you going to just go full time on the hot sauce? What's next for Drew Davis?
I mean, I don't really know because every time I think I know what's next, something else happens. But to that tune, I think I'm going to be traveling a lot next year and into later this year, just focusing on scaling and getting our story out there because I think it's an important one and just have as many people get crippling hot sauce in their hands as humanly possible.
Very good. Hopefully a lot of people are seeing it today. Let's wrap up with Maryland. Mr. Mfume, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to add my thanks to the others who have commended you for gathering us for this hearing today. I want to particularly thank the witnesses for diverse testimony. As Dean Phillips said when he was here earlier, I think he referred to all of you as a mosaic, a banker, a construction worker, company, a product maker, and a service provider. one of the things about being the caboose is that in the end, everything that can be said has been said. It's just that not everybody has said it. So bear with me for a few minutes as I go through just some observations. I don't know if I've got that many questions. Mr. Heim, let me just let you know that I heard your invitation to Representative Muser, and I see he did not say yes. So I'm going to commit him to come work with you from can't see in the morning to can't see at night in Pennsylvania. When I go on to the floor to vote, I'll let him know that he's expected to follow up. I'm doing unto him as he would do unto me. Trust me. And one of the things that's been interesting from my perspective is the fact that so many people, Mr. Chairman, have talked about children and other children and providing and also building a future for those children. I keep hearing the terms 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, and that was a long time ago for me. So I was particularly happy that Ms. Prince mentioned and said, does anybody remember the 1980s? Yes, there's some of us still around who remember that. And for me, the perspective is interesting. In the 1980s, I was a freshman on this committee. Ronald Reagan was president, and I spent 5 terms here in this committee hearing testimony like this. My angst is that now, many, many years later, I'm still hearing the same issues, the same problems, and I wonder, is it a matter of having come a long way or still having a much longer way to go? I left this body after 5 terms on my own, walked out the door and wanted to go see the rest of the world, and here I am 26 years later back on this committee hearing this. So I'm hoping that as we establish, Mr. Chair, a record here, that record really provides direction so that we can come out of this fashioning legislation to be able to assist with the problems that we've heard about today, which are not new, but seriously should not be allowed to continue and to go on. It's a good record. I want to thank all of you for adding to it. I'm going to use this, I think I've got 2 minutes here just to say a couple of things and ask a couple of quick questions. Ms. Hendrickson, you talked about the increased costs that you're facing and how unfortunately you've got to continue to pass it on to parents. Unlike big corporations, small businesses don't have teams of lawyers and tax accountants. And so I'm really interested in knowing if you have some thoughts on the tax code and how it affects you, and a suggestion of something that might be done to make it more palatable.
I think just fair taxation in general. All of us small business owners pay a much larger percent of our income into a system that then takes that money and it goes to the larger corporations and goes to those types of things so that our small businesses have a harder time then and are paying for those large businesses to buy back stock and shareholder and things like that for their shareholders.
So a greater sense of fairness.
Yes, definitely. And reinvesting in our people, especially our rural communities, because everybody's leaving because Main Street businesses are leaving, and when somebody drives through, they do not have a place to stop to eat because there's nothing left. We can look at it as like our interstate system. They go around everybody, and the fastest person who can drive on that the fastest gets the most instead of our.
So you would support tax credits for reinvestments
Yes.
back into small businesses?
Yes.
Good. Mr. Davis, I want to ask you just 1 or 2 quick things. First of all, I want to commend you. I've got a 17-year-old grandson, so he's on his way to college, and in 4 years I may send him directly to you so that he might find a way to get his first job. I want to commend you seriously on what you are doing. I don't even remember what I was doing at 17, but I know I wasn't as accomplished as you are. So thank you for being here. Thank you also for the simple eloquence of your example so that other people who watch this, who may have a disability, may come to understand that that is not the end of the world for them. And we have heard on this committee over and over again, well, why do you need to focus on this group and why do you need to focus on that group? And we focus too much on women, or we focus too much on minorities or disadvantaged businesses or veterans. Well, I'm going to add to that category that we ought to find some way to focus also on individuals like yourself who've overcome a great disability and who are contributing back to the country. So I want to congratulate you on that. I see my time. This time does not last long, ladies and gentlemen. It's fleeting. Mine has expired, and it's starting to flash in front of me. So let me just thank you again for being here, for your testimonies. Drew, I do have a few seconds. Would you go ahead and, for the record, kind of sum up what your feelings are about this, particularly from your perspective.
Yeah, so I believe, like you mentioned, that from my ownership of Crippling Hot Sauce, millions of dollars of tax dollars could be generated off of just simple grants from those individuals that aren't as fortunate as I am. I've been lucky enough to meet a bunch of individuals, and I just really thank everybody that has been with me along the way. But I've talked to hundreds of people with disabilities through my kind of statistical analysis, just to see how people respond off of the name, and I also ask them simple questions, and the main answer is, man, we would like to do something like you. We just don't know where to start because there's not representation and there's not many resources out there.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Now we go to Mr. Molinaro for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have some prepared questions I wanted to get to, but I wanted to echo my colleagues' comments. 80% of those with disabilities are unemployed in America, 80%. And Mr. Davis, Drew, I'm going to plant a question in your mind, and I'm going to let you answer it last. I've spent a great deal of time in the disabilities workspace. Creating pipeline of jobs is so challenging. You're inspiring in your own right, but there are countless young people and adults living with intellectual, physical, and developmental disabilities today who would like to enter the workforce. I'd like you to close. I'm going to take my time, but I want you to close with the one thing that you want them to know about how to be a success. And I say this as the father of a child with a disability. Who often needs to be inspired, and I want her to hear your words before we close today. Mr. Chairman, there is little question that small businesses are the backbone of our local economy. 70% of new jobs are created by existing small businesses. During the last 2.5 years, small businesses felt the brunt of the pandemic, economic closure, and the challenges that we face. I know many of my colleagues have already asked so many questions already. I'm sorry that I might repeat one or two in my few moments. But first to Mr. Heim, I live in a place where access to workforce, like lots of places in America, is a challenge. But because it's a more rural part of New York, limited access to transportation, daycare is a massive obstacle, educational opportunities limited, and in many cases, of course, New York leads the nation in out-migration. So we've seen more people leaving other states than any other place in America. Can you talk briefly, what are the things you've done or would do to expand access to that workforce?
So you're asking how do we get them not to leave?
Yes. I mean, I know the answer.
We're in the same shape.
Yeah.
Pennsylvania's the same way.
Yeah.
So we're in a rural area also. You know, I honestly, I believe it starts at high school. It starts at middle school. We need to retrain the way kids are thinking. We need to get them to understand that, you know, doing what we do in our trades or being in manufacturing is a good thing. There's a lot of money to be made out there, and there's in our industry there's something to be very proud of. When you're done working for the day, I mean, you can step back and you can look at something for the rest of your life and say, I was part of that. You can take your grandchildren there and so on. So it's really educating the youth, really, and getting a mindset change.
Yeah, we often say that our educational outcomes don't meet our economic needs, and in some ways the lack of vocational training, applied sciences, and others not only diminishes the value of the work, but demoralizes the individual. And I find that many people trying to enter the workforce, in particular, lacking access to that kind of education, feel worth less. And of course, they spent 2 years listening to governors like mine say that certain people were essential and certain people were not, as if government has any right to dictate. So I appreciate you pointing to that. Did you want to add to that?
Nope.
Ms. Prince, I just, my part of New York, upstate, rural, massive, what we call financial deserts, banking deserts. Access to capital is a major concern. What are what particular steps would make sense to broaden access to capital, in particular to support and spur innovation? Knowing that Drew gets the last 60 seconds of my time.
Okay, so in our organization, we have 14 locations. Some of those locations are in the Metroplex. Some of those locations are in communities as small as 1,500 people. So we have made a commitment to those deserts, as you say, to make sure that they still have access to community bankers who are focused on their needs and preserving their way of life. When you think about the people who have left to take, because they didn't want a construction job, the same thing has happened across the country in ag jobs. Ag families have lost generation after generation to the city, and we need those people back, just like we need the construction people back.
I appreciate that. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the opportunity to chair the subcommittee on innovation and workforce development. I appreciate that honor. Drew's a living example of what we need to do to spur innovation. Drew, what would you tell those living with disabilities what they need to do to be a success?
So mine would be just to push the envelope. There's a bunch of technological resources you got out there from technology. My favorite new one is AI, in which I use to write a lot of my captions, because I can't write as fast as a lot of people can. But it's just to use your resources. Don't be afraid of them, and live your life like a story, one page at a time, and just continue seeing what you could do. If you fail, it's okay. If you don't, you're a legend.
Mr. Chairman, you're a legend. I yield back my time.
That's a great way to close, and I want to thank all the witnesses today. You all have really done a great job. And one thing I want you to take back home, because everybody looks at Washington, we're a disaster, we're a mess up here, we know that. But at the same time, I think you can see today that we do have a lot of things we agree on. And this was a great hearing today where I think everybody agrees on the importance of small business and that sort of thing. So I want to thank all of you for being here. So without objection, members have 5 legislative days to submit additional materials and written questions for the witnesses to the chair, which will be forwarded to the witnesses. I ask the witnesses to please respond promptly, and if there's no other further business without objection, the committee